Good morning, and thanks for joining us for this News 13 special honoring Black history, sharing our stories. I'm Annette Pegler. This morning, we will bring you stories of African Americans who are making a difference in communities across South Carolina and beyond. We began this morning in Horry County. The history of slavery bears an uncomfortable past for many African Americans, and the decades that followed presented struggles. But farming, something all Americans benefit from, helped Black folks in Burgess thrive. And now the only living farm museum there, Freewoods Farm, shares the story of their survival.
The end of the Civil War, when Sherman started marching through the South, Black people started leaving those plantations. And by the end of the war, of course, they were all free to leave the plantations. And a lot of them left. Very few stayed.
Nestled in a small town miles away from the Myrtle Beach coast lies Freewoods Farm, a community that tells the story of what African Americans did during the first century of freedom, 1865 to 1960.
Most of them became farmers. Most of them sharecroppers, of course. A few were able to own their own lands.
The 40-acre property is land inherited by President of Freewoods Foundation, O'Neill Smalls.
One of the proposals made during that period was to give each family 40 acres and a mule. And Black people became attached to that notion. They wanted the 40 acres and a mule. They didn't get it. So we represent that 40 acres the newly freed slaves did not get.
The original group of farmers in Freewoods came from Longwoods Plantation right up the road. Smalls's great grandfather was part of the first generation of more than a dozen Black families in this area. His father was a World War I veteran.
They all played a major role in helping us develop Freewoods Farm, providing a lot of background.
So, how did African Americans survive during this period?
During that first century that we're talking about, cotton was the cash crop for most of those farmers. They helped to develop the greatest agricultural industry in the world. I think everybody agrees that the United States agricultural industry is second to none.
Black families built their own churches.
They started first with bush huts. And then, of course, later on, they were able to get lumber and build those churches.
And their own schools.
You have some that were built primarily by those farmers. Morris College, for example, Tuskegee, for example.
At present day, Freewood Farms is still an active farm in the Burgess community, but it also serves as an educational opportunity for people, highlighting what this land stood for and its history.
We grow string beans and butter beans and sweet corn and sweet potatoes.
Some of the original houses Smalls's ancestors lived in are still standing tall.
So they went from those bush huts to places like this in the 1940s and 50s.
At the turn of the century, Freewoods Farm became a museum with a goal of educating people who live and visit the Grand Strand. Oh, there it is.
They can come for tours and they can help us. We rent out this building for weddings and family reunions and conferences and what have you. And of course, this helps to support the farm.
Smalls says sometimes it's uncomfortable to hear the history of slavery and the century after, but he hopes Freewoods Farm will continue to educate so the hard work of his ancestors is never forgotten.
And no one can deny that Black people played a major role in helping to develop that agricultural industry. They helped to develop the greatest agricultural industry in the world.